Hello everyone, my name is Dee and welcome to Books and Quirks. Today is another Classics with Dee episode. So I pulled the next two books off of my shelf and I want to get straight into them. I'm not sure, you may have heard of one of the books. I'm not sure. I just know that I haven't heard anybody talk about them on booktube, and a lot of the people that I know still haven't heard of it, or haven't read it. They may have heard of it but never read it. So yeah, let me get right into it. So the first one that I want to talk about is The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner. You may have heard of this book. I just don't think a lot of people have read it, which was why I mentioned it a few minutes ago. This book was published in 1920, so it was the early 20th century. And he is an American author. So this is not British literature. He's an American author. And it's considered one of the best in the 20th century. And I have to agree. Like I said in the first episode, all of the classics that I kept, I really love. And I kept them for a reason. I really didn't keep ones that I didn't enjoy. All of the ones on my shelf are really ones that I treasure, and this is another copy that's a little bit beaten up. It might not look it on video, but it is a little bit beaten up. The spine is a mess, and there are little marks everywhere. But what can you do? So once again, I may be looking down from time to time because I do have some notes written down. So if you see me looking down, it's just to remind myself of the characters and whatnot, so I don't get them wrong and really mess up the review. So basically, this story is about the Compton family. The Compton family is an aristocratic family living in southern Mississippi, and it follows three brothers. The first brother is Benji Compton. Benji is 33 years old, and he is mentally challenged. And then there is the older brother, Quentin, who is a very kind of depressed character. And then there is Jason, which is the younger brother, who is just very materialistic, and he wants nothing more than just to get more money at whatever cost, no matter the cost, I should say. And there is Dilsey, who is the servant of the family. So this story is told in multiple point of views, and Faulkner, I think one of the reasons I love this story, and it may prove problematic for some readers, is he employs a lot of different styles. So the first one I want to say is that you get the point of view of each of these brothers, and you even get the point of view of Dilsey, who is the servant. Now, because you get the point of view, it starts off with the point of view of Benji, who is 33 years old and mentally challenged. Now, because you're in his mind, because it's his point of view, there's very little sentence structure. It's kind of a stream of consciousness, and there are sporadic jumps in terms of what you're learning and what you're seeing. So in his point of view, in Benji's point of view, there's really a lack of structure. Now, I heard a lot of people criticize that, at least when I was studying this novel. I first read it in college, and I read it a few years after as well, is that, they really found it hard to follow. But you have to remember that this is just his point of view, and you do get the other point of views as well. You get Jason's point of view and Quentin's point of view. Quentin is the older brother, Jason is the youngest brother, and, they do have a more structured point of view because they are... they don't have that mental challenge, that obstacle. I also want to say that there is also a part in the book where it sort of turns into third-person omniscient point of view. So that can be a little bit jarring, but I just think it's a masterpiece. This book follows the Compton family and their basically decline into their decline in finances, their decline in social stature, their decline in morality, all of these things. It really examines each each character on their own and what causes this decline. I will say that this book isn't very long. It's under 300 pages, I believe. Oh, it's just 303 pages to be exact. At least this copy is. It's a very slow read. I don't think this is something that you can fly through. Both times I read it, it was a very slow read, but it's very impactful, I think. And I really love it. It really examines, so many things. Morality and greed and, even family bonds or the lack thereof. Now, having said all of that, I will say that I've also described this book in the past as like watching a train wreck. You're watching it, you know that horrible things are about to happen, but you can't tear your eyes away. It's kind of like that. I really enjoy this book, and I want to reread it again for the third time one day soon, because I just think it's all kinds of wonderful, despite some of the horrendous things. So yeah, The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, a wonderful, in my opinion, classic. So the next book that I want to talk about is Quicksand and Passing by Nella Larson. This is actually a bind-up of two books. The first book is Quicksand, and the second book is Passing. Okay, first let me say that this book was published in 1928, and it is, where the first book, Quicksand, was published in 1928, Passing was published in 1929. So we have to take the time period into consideration, but these books deal with sexuality, they deal with racism, they deal with all of the things happening during this time period, and also is during the Harlem Renaissance. So these two books take place in Harlem, and they follow two different storylines. So the first book is Quicksand, and Quicksand follows a woman who is married to a rural preacher, and she is forced to have several children in rapid succession because she's married to a preacher. They don't believe in birth control, and she's just forced to keep having children. So Quicksand deals with marriage in a very dark way. It really examines the emotional damage of women during that time, in some marriages, not all, but the emotional damage that can occur, the psychological damage that can occur. These are African American women during the 1920s, so it really examines the social state of women during that time, and also the sexual morality that is thrust upon women in that time period. So it was really, both of these novels are very dark, but I enjoyed them nonetheless, if that makes sense, because I think they are very just powerful books, and each book is really short. As you can see, the whole bind-up is really short, so each book is about a little over 100 pages, so it really takes no time to get through. Again, just like The Sound and the Fury, it's not, both of these, although short, are not fast reads, but it does help that they're just a little over 100 pages. So Passing is the second book. Passing follows two main characters, two women, and basically both of these women are in loveless marriages, and one of them is passing. So what passing is some women, African American women, who had light skin color passed as white, basically, in society. So there's this woman who is married to a white man, and she's lived all her life passing as white. And part of the reason she's in a loveless marriage is she doesn't want to have a baby, because she lives in this constant fear of having a dark baby. And then obviously she'll be found out. Interracial marriage in this time was not something that was allowed. And she just couldn't have that. She was constantly in fear of sleeping with her husband and having and the possibility of making a baby, and the baby coming out darker skinned like some of her relatives. So it's a very sensitive subject. Both of these are, but especially Passing, I think. Passing was such an impactful novel of, you know, especially racism and what it means if you're found out, if you are passing, and what could possibly happen to you if you are found out. It also deals with sexual desire. You know, this book, like I said, was published, or at least Passing, in 1929, and it deals with the sexual desire between these two women. Like I said, you know, it does follow two women, although Claire, I think her name is Claire. I can't quite remember, but I believe it's Claire, is, since she's passing, is white. But the two women have a strong sexual attraction to one another, which is surprising for a book at this time, but it really delves deep into the sexual attraction between two women and what that can do to the psyche, especially during that time, and what society and morality, you know, religious morality, thrusts upon you into thinking that there's something wrong with that. Because, you know, in that time, that kind of thing was forbidden. Just like it was forbidden for an interracial couple to marry, it was also forbidden to have a same-sex relationship. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I explained these novels well. I really tried to write some notes just to make sure that I stayed on topic and didn't go off on some tangent. I just think that these two novels are so important and so impactful, and I absolutely adore them for what they bring to light. You know, sexual morality and racism, and this idea of racial passing, and in the backdrop of the whole Harlem Renaissance era. I think that it's just a great novel, and one that people don't really talk about that much. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that these two brought to light some others that aren't really talked about. If any one of these seem interesting, or if you've read them, please let me know in the comments. I would love to talk about them. And yeah, so two more of my favorites, and I'll put another video up soon. I think I'm going to put one up every other week rather than every week. But every week I'll pull 2 or 3 books off my shelf and talk about them. So that is basically all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.